my name is Kathryn Garcia, and I'm here to talk to you about the freedom of expression in China. Teenagers in the U.S. are obsessively on phones and technology. Look at us. We can't take our eyes off the screens. We take for granted that we can use a selfie stick to take a picture and post it wherever we want. We are free to share our ideas with the world on social media or anywhere else on the internet. Look at the Snapchats we send people. In China, 2 men were sent to prison for 9 years for just publishing love poems. Just because they didn't have government authorization, they were charged with unlawful operation of a business. Imagine that, wanting to share your opinions with the world, but instead being put in jail for trying to do so. Article 19 of the Declaration of Human Rights protects the freedom of expression, but clearly this right and freedom is violated in China. Right now, the Chinese government censors any published content, from essays to newspapers, and their notorious firewall on the internet censors over 100 million tweets a day. Is that ethical? Is it fair to block people's opinions? People naturally have the urge to express themselves, so when their expression is prevented, there is social unrest. Dissidents, such as Liu Xiaobo, are fighting for this right by protesting and by publishing controversial topics before the government can find out. There is awareness for the violation of this right, but the people of China deserve the ability to express themselves and share their ideas without the interference of the government. The freedom of expression has always been an issue in China. In 300 AD, the first censorship law was introduced. China was ruled by an emperor during this time, and there are no specific guaranteed rights. However, people were content because the empire was small and isolated, so they didn't know what they were missing. Years later, the age of imperialism began, and there were now outside influences. People began pushing for individual rights and freedoms, and the government became more conservative to avoid a possible revolution. Ironically, there was a revolution, and the dynasty was overthrown in 1911. In 1912, the new republic formed, and the Communist Party of China began to take control and enforce their communist beliefs. One example of how the government attempted to prevent people from expressing their opinions, was the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. Students protested for more democracy and freedoms, but the government responded with violence. This one man, after being attacked by a soldier, 700 people died and about 10,000 were arrested. The government is fearful of more revolts like this and has been increasing their restrictions on the freedom of expression to the point where they now completely censor the internet. The freedom of expression evolved differently in other places like the U.S. When we were ruled by Great Britain, they restricted our expression because they were fearful of a revolution, just like the Chinese government. But we were angry with this, so we revolted, and we guaranteed our freedom of expression in the U.S. Constitution. We can now freely speak our minds because the Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. The government is now clearly limited in its ability to restrict people's freedom of expression. However, in China, Article 35 of the Chinese Constitution states that citizens of the People's Republic of China enjoy freedom of speech, of the press, and of assembly, and of association. The people can enjoy the freedom. Does that mean anything? Do these people actually have any rights? The government never placed any restrictions on itself, and they're not violating their constitution by censoring information. Now, people in China have attempted to secure their right to the freedom of expression, but the dissidents who do things like protest and publish controversial papers despite the government's censorship are rarely successful. For instance, free speech protesters in Guangzhou, China in 2013 held signs and chanted slogans in favor of free expression in the media, and journalists have gone on strike to object the government's interference with their editorials. And in response to these challenges, the Chinese government only further restricted public discussion of the issue online by blocking related topics or by responding with physical violence, like their response to the Tiananmen Square massacre. The people are afraid of the government, but awareness for the government's violation of the freedom of expression is spreading. Okay. To improve the condition of the freedom of expression in China, there are a few actions that can be taken. First, the government should in fact grant a right to the freedom of expression by implementing a new article in the Chinese Constitution. In this article, the government should be restricted from making any policies or acting in ways that abridge the freedom of expression. With this, the right can be enforced because the restrictions are directly on the government. Secondly, the government needs to allow the Chinese people to access controversial information. The government can reduce their censorship of published works and information on the internet so the Chinese people can be exposed to new ideas and opinions. People can then be aware of controversial issues and their perspectives can be broadened. This new knowledge would bring growth to China. Thirdly, and finally, the Chinese government should allow the Chinese people to freely express their ideas and opinions. For example, the government can begin allowing this expression by allowing protests to occur, something like this. Instead of responding with violence or the incarceration of protesters, the government can allow people to criticize the government and experience the freedom of expression. Then, China can be improved because the controversial voices of people can be heard, and the country can change to fit the needs of the people. By cutting back on the restrictions on free expression and by following these possible recommendations, the people of China can begin expressing themselves. And overall, if the government can become less conservative, the values of Article 19 can finally become tangible. Once this right is protected, the people of China can then express their thoughts, they can express their opinions, and they can finally have a say in their government and in their world. And they can post pictures like this without the government's authorization.